Hello, Bramer County and all of Iowa. This is Sean and Emily coming to you from our Deciding Iowa blog, where we'll give an update on the legislative actions and consider the impacts locally and for Iowa generally.
Hi, I'm Dr. Sean Ellebrook, and I'm a cancer scientist, biochem professor, school board member, and former House District 57 candidate.
And I'm Dr. Emily Babers. I'm an OBGYN, mother of 3, and a reproductive freedom advocate.
Emily, it took an extra week and a half and a marathon closing session, but Iowa finally gavelled out of the 2025 legislative year.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, the Senate ultimately passed eminent domain legislation. House File 639 redefines common carrier, helps with potential landowner insurance hikes, and expands on who can intervene on Iowa Utilities Commission proceedings. House File 639 is a step in the right direction, but it took 12 Republican senators to hold up budget appropriations to even get eminent domain legislation to the Senate floor. Senators Amy Sinclair and Mike Buslow, as well as many other Republicans, more than appear to want this pipeline against the wishes of the public majority.
It's hard to understand.
Since the legislature gavelled out before Reynolds signed the House File 639 bill, they have zero leverage when it comes to her decision to sign it or not. Emily, we know Reynolds has already said she won't run again, and I share others' concerns she will let House File 639 sit on her desk unsigned and unrealized. Some of the other Republican leaders feel that she will sign. I guess we'll just wait and see. The House also just passed the Pharmacy Benefits Manager Bill, and business groups have come out against it. So it's unclear whether that will be signed either. It would be crushing to both groups if that were to be the case. So we'll have to keep our eye out.
Absolutely. I share your concern that she has little incentive to sign it, and we know that she's had the support of the Summit, company in the past. And so we'll see where her loyalties lie. She's got 30 days to sign them.
30 days, yeah.
I sure hope she does. And the many Iowans who have been lobbying against this, calling their legislators, meeting in libraries.
Showing up every week,
right.
Down there in Des Moines. It is an inspiration.
Yeah.
So Republican leaders have tossed out their fiscal responsibility line when they bring up Iowa's new budget. They completely gloss over the $900 million or more deficit that is a direct result of their choices in leadership. We'll be burning through our one-time federal surplus funds just to barely prop up essential services. We've talked about this in the past. Iowa is in no position to pick up the slack if and when Medicaid and other support programs are cut at the federal level. Well, how bad is it for Iowa financially? When the legislature gutted the AA, severely hurting schools, especially rural schools' ability to meet special education needs of Iowa children, the plan was to put $14 million into paraeducator funding this year. Well, the House had paraeducator funding in their original budget proposal, but the Senate, who was working with Reynolds, and I'm completely sure at this point is run by Sith Lords, did not. When the two chambers finally got together and produced one budget, they had agreed to go ahead with that $14 million, but they had to pull money from one-time sports wagering fund.
What?
Yeah. Our legislature is basically checking pockets and under sofa cushions for gambling money to pay our educators.
For the party of for the party of fiscal responsibility to be meeting their obligations from emergency funds rather than properly budgeting, it's basically the government equivalent of maxing out the credit cards and hoping you don't have any emergencies come up. Except in this case, it's all of our households at stake if an emergency arises. One of the promises of our elected officials was to focus on lower costs for Iowa families who were suffering from so-called Bidenomics. I know nobody enjoys paying taxes, but ultimately we aren't keeping up with the needs of our state, not collecting reasonable taxes to care for our citizens, our communities, and also the environment, as well as plan for the future, which is at the whims of our federal government right now, too.
That's true.
I'm really, really disappointed to think about the balancing of the books that's going to need to happen in the future now, once our surplus funds run out. Yep. It's a lot to think about. Is there anything that you're glad did not pass recently?
Well, I'm glad the legislature let Reynolds' energy bill die.
Sure.
There's no doubt, given rights of first refusal to current utility companies was problematic for the legislature and Iowans from a free market perspective. One bill that passed that I did not like involved state leaders giving corporations a huge break on unemployment tax. Thinking back in 2022, about 3 years ago, they cut unemployment benefits from 26 down to 16 weeks. And because they cut how much Iowans can draw on unemployment, this led to the unemployment trust fund to balloon to about $2 billion. So now they use the size of that fund to justify dramatically slashing unemployment business tax, saying businesses were overpaying into the pool. So these corporations, business will save an estimated $1.2 billion over the next handful of years, and the legislature rejected an amendment that would have strengthened investing their savings back into the workforce. I'm concerned about cutting unemployment benefits in general and the long-term solvency of unemployment trust fund in particular.
Sean, I don't remember what number we are, but I'm pretty sure 16 weeks is toward the short end of all states in terms of how long unemployment benefits are offered.
Yeah.
And I get it. It's really important to support the small businesses. And I know that one way to look at this bill is that they're supporting small businesses by cutting that tax. But on the other hand, having a healthy unemployment fund keeps Iowa prepared for, a recession or a public health emergency like COVID again, or major layoffs for Iowa employers. Mm-hmm. I mean, we spoke earlier this session about the number of layoffs from companies like Winnebago, Whirlpool, Hy-Vee. So Iowa tracks layoffs on the Iowa government website, and right now we are on track to have a record year for layoffs. There's more layoffs already just this year in 2025 than there were in 2023 total. So combining that with Iowa having the 49th worst economy in the nation, as we discussed previously, it's a curious time to be cutting back on unemployment resources.
It doesn't make a lot of sense.
It doesn't, right?
Our property taxes have skyrocketed because of things like housing shortages, weakened local zoning control, and years of low interest rates. Plus, continued underfunding of public schools directly results in higher property tax for all of us.
Right.
So people are getting hammered by property tax. And now Republican leadership has failed on their promise to deliver property tax relief this legislative session. Mm-hmm. A big reason why is that reducing your property tax will blow up local city, school, and county budgets unless the state finds a way to backfill their lost revenue. And the Republican leaders know Iowa doesn't have the money to do that with our budget deficit. Well, budget hawks will point out state and local governments should do a better job with their budgets. And you know what? I agree. They can and should always strive to remember whose money they are spending. But there's only so much cutting we can do. And I want safe roads and sidewalks and a dependable EMS response with appropriately funded police force and schools. We can't slash property tax on spending cuts alone, and trying to backfill lost local revenue with non-existent state funds is impossible. They are stuck.
Well, and Governor Reynolds acknowledged in a statement after the legislature gavelled out that the work on property tax wasn't accomplished. And she promised to make it a priority next year and to make it sustainable by continuing to streamline government. But as we look at the challenging rural infrastructure already, roads, bridges, sidewalks, buildings, pools, parks, as well as the huge impact that federal spending cuts have already had in Iowa, I just don't know how prudent more streamlining would be. I'm really hoping that Iowa voters decide that they want to support investments in our communities and our public works and our schools rather than more cuts.
Yeah, it seems like we're approaching a tipping point on some of these cuts.
I feel it. I feel it approaching.
I do too. Emily, to close this inaugural season of Deciding Iowa, I believe we're on, episode 10?
I think so.
Let's pick out our least and most favorite bills and then end on what legislation we would have pushed.
Okay.
So 2 bills that I applaud are the reduction of cell phone usage in schools and the increased disability and death benefits for firefighters and other first responders regarding cancer. Thank you.
You know, one really great thing that happened is the Senate made a last-minute effort to pass the House File 889, which provides 4 weeks of paid maternity leave and 1 week of paid paternity leave for state of Iowa employees.
Yeah.
So that's certainly a start toward really supporting families. However, of course, we have to note not all Iowans are state employees, so this bill, has some room to still improve.
Okay. Well, on the other side, one of my least favorite bills is, well, okay, Emily, I'm cheating and combining here. It is all the anti-science bills, many of which didn't survive but are still problematic by their very existence.
Yeah.
As a scientist and a citizen, I am angry and scared about the Fed cuts to research and programs. This anti-science movement is alive and well at the state level, too. Having to pick one, I will hold up Senate File 175, which is the Fetal Development Instruction Bill, because it is so dangerous. We just let propaganda disguise as science-based health education into our public schools. Another problematic bill for me is the removal of gender identities from the Iowa Civil Rights Act. Love who you want to love, be who you want to be, who am I to judge? If you're not actively hurting another human being, go for it. I got other fish to fry. What I'm seeing is Iowans judging other Iowans and then legislating their own personal beliefs into laws, trampling personal freedoms in the process. You are not saving anyone. You are hurting them, and in the long run, you are hurting yourselves. Emily, I don't talk much about my faith, other than I was raised Catholic, but my faith means openness and love, not closed-minded prejudice wrapped in false cloak of Christian morals. This dude does not abide.
I agree with those two bills. Those are a couple of my least favorites as well. At a time when we have real problems in the state, our lagging economy, more cuts to schools, as of yet unrealized impact on the education of our children, ongoing healthcare workforce shortages, truly that are a product of poor decisions for the last couple of decades, and we still have the looming pipeline without stronger landowner protections. It's just really hard to pick one least favorite bill. But I'll tell you what I would have liked to have seen. Bills that actually funded schools at the levels that they need, without giving our kids the best tools possible and fully resourced schools. We're not going to put our economy in a strong position. Have educated young people who are able to fill jobs and companies that want to come here to have Iowans working there. I would have liked to have seen fewer attacks on science and misinformation in our schools. And really, from trying to restrict vaccines to Senator Salmon's myriad of library bills, it all is just muddying the water of what the real problems in Iowa are. I also would have liked to have seen a substantive revision of the voucher system. If there are people in Iowa who want to use their tax dollars for private schools in educational savings accounts, okay. But a majority of Iowans oppose the voucher system, and it's currently an open line in the budget that's unsustainable.
Yep.
If it isn't repealed, it must be constrained for the sake of our state's solvency in the coming years. Of course, I would really like to see the legislature stay out of the exam room and let women and families make their own decisions around pregnancy and abortion care. I don't know if you've seen the situation in Georgia where there's a young woman who's on life support. She's been declared legally brain dead, but she's gestating a pregnancy that will eventually result in a baby without a mother. And the courts have ruled she must be kept alive on life support until the pregnancy can be delivered. So that's a baby without a mother. And it's a devastating example of how these laws make impossible decisions worse. That situation shouldn't be in the courts. It should be decided by the family at the bedside in consultation with doctors. And Iowa has really gone down a dark path.
Iowans have a big lift in front of us when it comes to fixing our poor national rankings. We need conservative fiscal thought to work alongside a social support mindset to find a utopian middle ground of meeting Iowa needs through a balanced budget without a bloated government spending deal.
I'm all in for utopia.
But Iowa has not achieved any sort of conservative, liberal balance in a really long time. We need to bring our legislative back into the middle, and that starts with Iowans investing in fellow Iowans. Do away with reverse Robin Hood disproportional tax cuts. We need to return to a reasonable progressive tax system that gives the property tax relief we want and deserve and dampens the problematic rise in regressive sales tax. From there, we need to end, or at least income cap, and fully audit the school ESA voucher program. I'm with you on that. Public tax dollars belong in public schools. Fix our water. Empower and support the DNR, define our water reserves, limit water usage permits, work with farmers on reduced nitrogen programs, adequate buffer strips, and legislate support for PFAS monitoring and cleanup in our environment. Fund and expand programs like Crop to Table and those that diversify crop production, especially in response to climate change.
I agree.
Give more than $1 million to cancer epidemiology, do more for radon mitigation and water filtration upgrades for rural water and municipal treatment facilities. Stop making ourselves sick. I love the state, Emily, and I know you do too. It is time for Iowa common sense and work ethic to show up and make the changes we need. Thank you for putting this together with me over these last 10 episodes. It's been educational, fun, rewarding. Thank you again.
It's my pleasure. I appreciate all the work that you've put into it, and I hope that everyone has gotten a chance to learn a little bit about what's been going on at the State House.
Thanks for watching Deciding Iowa, everyone, and be well.